So there you have it. We're going to an adjournment as expected right on time. The Madlanga Commission of Inquiry is sitting for a fourth day. Fannie Masemola is, of course, the man in the hot seat for the first time, and he's been there since 9:30 on the dot. So no changes insofar as keeping time is concerned. If you're watching us, we're coming to you live from the Bridget Mabandla Justice College. That's where the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry, that's probing criminality, alleged political interference and abuse, is currently sitting. And of course, we've heard from Lieutenant General Matanga, the man who, if you like, set in motion the series of events that led us here. And now we're hearing from the second witness in Fannie Masemola in his capacity, of course, as the police commissioner. Kenny Matanga is our senior reporter who was inside that auditorium, is now with us here at our satellite studios as we continue, Kenny, to make sense of what's happened so far. And you know, we started off by mentioning that Fannie Masemola's character is very different to that of Lieutenant General. We can already see that playing itself out. But what's happened so far, I think it's safe to say, is really the laying of the groundwork to try and probe his understanding of policy, the law, etc.
And indeed, he has affirmed also Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi's understanding of the law and how the political head and the operational head operates within policing in South Africa. So you have your minister, then you have your National Commissioner of Police. So essentially what you're seeing here is a groundwork being laid for the kind of powers the two enjoy. That context will later become relevant when you start to get into deep detail about the political killings task team, because what we're reading from the evidence that has been given by General Masemola at this stage is that the minister, if indeed this is how we're reading it, that he made that decision without consulting, then it was an overreach on his part, and he was now straying into the area of operations which did not fall in his remit as a minister.
To disband the political killings.
Correct.
To make sure we're all on the same
correct.
page, right?
And that would affirm Mkhwanazi's testimony last week that the minister did not have the right to give out that instruction, or rather issue out that directive stating that the political killings task team would have been disbanded without consulting with the National Commissioner. And in addition to that, it would have had to have been a decision taken by the National Commissioner, not the minister himself.
Right. There was a moment that the chair had with Fannie Masemola as he was trying to ascertain, I think it was more of a scenario building, the circumstances under which Fannie Masemola would take an instruction from the minister. Take us back to that moment and why it's actually important.
Well, it's important for the foundation of trying to understand as to how this decision would have been made. I'm sure we'll get to that at a later stage, but essentially the generic question was that if a minister issued out a directive or an instruction to the National Commissioner of Police that did not fall within his remit, which means it was unlawful, would he obey or disobey that instruction? It started off sketchy with him stating it would depend, and that obviously prompted more questions, because it's either lawful or it's unlawful. He either can instruct you or he can't instruct you. And if he can't instruct you, then under what circumstances could you possibly say that you could obey or it could depend? Rather, the answer should have been you would disobey the instruction, because it's an unlawful instruction coming from the ministerial head, and it speaks to that issue of political interference. But he struggled to answer that question, and that gives you an idea of the, what Mkhwanazi is suggesting with at least the element of the alleged political interference. Right. Because I think his exact words were, is that could be career limiting. So it gives you an idea of the consequences that could follow, or what is seemingly suggested through that testimony, if one were to disobey that instruction. But we eventually got around to the right answer, which is he would have to disobey that instruction if it was an unlawful one, and one which did not fall within the remit or the powers of the minister to make.
Many people, I can tell you now, will say that the hesitance is very telling. You know, the fact that he kind of, eventually got around to it when something really should have been black and white from the beginning, but will allow the commission to make a determination of what they're going to read into that. as expected, the political killings task team came up, and in fact we're getting to, I think, the meat of this particular unit towards the end of, I suppose, round one of today's testimony, really getting us a sense of the circumstances that led to the establishment of this commission. A lot of information already in the public domain.
Yes, already affirming again Konazi's testimony that there was this issue of political violence that prevails in the province, existed pre-constitutional democracy, I think got worse in the constitutional democracy. So this team had to be established, and it was established in an ad hoc fashion, not by legislation, and it was designed to deal with this particular problem of political violence in the KZN province, as that is where it was prevailing and is still prevailing at the time. Now, I think we're going to get to the disbandment at a later stage, possibly tomorrow or later this afternoon, but questions then arise as to what informed the minister to take such a decision when we know that the issue of political violence still prevails in that province. Kwanazi gives a reason that it could be influenced by a third hand, an ulterior purpose allegedly, which is connected to this organized crime syndicate and the work that this political killings task team was doing once it moved into the Gauteng province at the request of the CGI ops. Then I think the picture will sort of come together once you get towards the meat of the testimony, but at this point they are raising or rather laying the foundation upon which this team was necessary for the policing in South Africa, and the kind of powers each figure, well, that is the ministerial, which is described as the strategic policy direction type of head, whereas the operational head, which would be the SABC National Commission, and that deals with the how you implement that strategy that the minister would have come up with. So his example was, if you decide that cash and transit heists are going to be your priority for policing this year, then you limit it there as the minister, and it's now up to the National Commissioner to decide how they are going to give effect to this problem, or rather address this issue in policing. You don't go in and state that as a minister, this person must be deployed to this team, or this person must be in this province, or you must deploy this budget, or whatever the case may be. That is now in the realm of operations, which would fall in the hands of the National Commissioner, not the minister. But what we're getting to eventually is, obviously we're getting to this argument that the minister, the now suspended minister, may have committed an overreach or breach of his powers when he entered into that realm of operations. But it's important to make the distinction first before you reach any conclusions.
There's definitely a lot of signposting, right? Using a whole lot more of a principle argument before we get into the specifics.
Yes.
But insofar as that is concerned, I found it very interesting when Fannie Masemola was asked whether the minister, for example, would see to the disbandment of a task team that works with cash and transit heists. The National Commissioner said something to the effect of, look, that's a low-level kind of team, and you know, he wouldn't really go that far.
Yes.
And I think there's a bit of an insinuation there.
He's intimating that how would you go into the KZN province, such a low team in the KZN province, to deal with that issue, which is not really high level.
Right.
It's really something that's operating within the KZN province underneath the direction of the KZN Provincial Commissioner, who reports eventually to the National Commissioner. So he's painting the picture that it would be quite, extraordinary for a ministerial head to go to such lengths to direct the operations at such a low level of the provincial killings task team, intimating what we're probably going to hear a bit later when we really get into the meat of why was this political killings task team disbanded from the point of view of the National Commissioner.
Without a doubt. Matanga, thanks very much indeed. We continue, of course, to watch very closely the different developments surrounding just broadly the allegations that have been made, as the different role players also have their say. Just to remind you again that the inquiry is separated into three main parts. We're still in the first phase where people are just giving evidence. There's going to be a stage where that evidence is tested, and ultimately at a particular stage, some of those who are implicated will get an opportunity to respond and supposedly cross cross-examine the witnesses that have taken to the hot seat. The SABC News team keeping a close eye on those developments for you throughout the course of the day, certainly as much as we can, given the fact that at some stage the testimony will not be in camera. Fannie Masemola will be back on the hot seat in about 5 minutes or so. And as I say, if history is anything to go by, it'll be exactly 5 minutes. Stick around, more from the agenda in just a moment.